But Ottoman records, Western eyewitnesses, and British reports expose the Zionist fairy tale as a shameless lie. In reality, the Jezreel Valley was the breadbasket of Palestine and one of the most intensely cultivated stretches of farmland in the Mediterranean before the Zios arrived.
So it's a biblical location.
Zionist propaganda claims that Jewish settlers transformed the Jezreel Valley from a depopulated, malaria-infested wasteland into a fertile paradise. It's central to the myth of making the desert bloom. It's also a shameless lie. We know that the valley was intensely cultivated by 22 villages because a 19th century legal battle over stolen land titles left a paper trail. The stage for this theft was set by the Ottoman Land Code of 1858. On paper, it was a modernization effort intended to register existing Miri land titles. In reality, it was a trap. Registering your land title meant military conscription for your sons. That was a death sentence in the empire's collapsing frontiers in Yemen, the Balkans, and the Caucasus. The Ottoman accountant general in Egypt remarked that the Yemen front was a foundry that melted soldiers away like salt in water. So the fellahin, as the Palestinian peasants were called, dared not register. In 1872, an insolvent Ottoman government moved to settle its massive debts to the Sursak banking family of Beirut by allowing the Sursaks to register vast tracts of the Jezreel Valley for pennies, illegally voiding the villagers' land titles. More than 20 fellahin villages petitioned the Acre Administrative Council to reverse the sale, and they won. The council ordered the rights of many of the villages restored. However, after the Sursaks paid a massive $1 million bribe to Rashid Pasha, the governor of Syria, the council's verdict was overturned by imperial decree. Despite this record of habitation, Alan Tal, in his 2002 book, Pollution in a Promised Land, wrote, "The Jezreel Valley at the start of the 20th century was an undeveloped swamp."
Boy, that guy sure looks like he's native to the land, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He looks like he'd have skin cancer after like a week living there.
Why have they perpetuated that myth for so long?
Well, it's the same. I mean, I never heard it called Jezreel Valley before, but it's the whole concept of the land without a people for a people without a land. And I remember, them teaching us even when I was there. And that's why we had to plant these trees. So instead of planting trees or keeping the landscaping and the agriculture and the entire ecology how it was, they came in and destroyed it and then had us plant non-indigenous trees, which is what is now all over there now, are these non-indigenous trees that are planted all over the place. But no, it was just part of their effort to paint the Palestinian people as savage and uncivilized, and they didn't know how to grow food. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. And the whole area was cultivated, which is why the Zionists wanted it. Even think about it. And I've said this before, does anybody believe that a whole group of European Jews would be interested in land that didn't grow anything? In what universe would a whole group of Jews be interested in a land that was barren? They wouldn't.
But also this whole idea that they would make the desert bloom, like there's some special people that can do something that no one else can.
Right.
Type of,
it's silly.
It is. And to think that that's been sold for generations.
The Jerusalem Post wrote that the valley had been uninhabitable for centuries prior to the first Jewish settlers returning to their biblical homeland. Tal and the Jerusalem Post ignored the documentation that the Sursak's 104,000-acre acquisition was populated by 22 villages, or about 26 people per square mile, comparable to the population density of many Midwestern U.S. farm townships of the same era. How valuable was this stolen land? Consider the account of American travel writer Bayard Taylor. Visiting the region in the 1850s, he described the Jezreel in his book, The Lands of the Saracens. It is one of the richest districts in the world. It is now a green sea, covered with fields of wheat and barley, or great grazing tracts on which multitudes of sheep and goats are wandering.
This is 1855. This is almost a century prior to Israel being created. It sounds to me like this was a very fertile land that some Zio scum saw and decided that they wanted it. This is just conquest. Are you doing something over there?
Yes, actually, I am. But I am following this, and I'm very aware of the conquest and white colonialism and why we use this little outpost in West Asia and why we think we're entitled to it and how we use the Jews to get everybody on board. And yes, I'm very aware of this. Are you trying to educate me on the history?
Well, no, but I am hoping you follow along.
I am following. Just continue with what you're doing.
Sure, but I also
Don't
think
worry
it's
about me.
But I think it's important to point out here that this is a very important point to be made. The acknowledgement of Palestine in 1855, and not just any place in the desert. This is a established area. This is an area that is civilized and has cash crops and has civilization. And this lie, this unconscionable lie forever and a day, that was in many ways the hallmark of how this all started, claiming that this was a land for people without a land. It's always been a lie.
15 years later, Mark Twain had a similar reaction when he first encountered the Jezreel. He found it, checkered with fields like a chessboard, dotted about its borders with white, compact villages. When it is robed in the fresh verdure of spring, it must form a charming picture. Yes, when Taylor and Twain visited, the Palestinian peasants were poor, but so were peasants everywhere else. They were far better off than Irish peasants, 1 million of whom died of starvation under British rule. They had more rights than Russian peasants, who were literally slaves until 1861. Fellahin, who had lost their land titles, paid about 40% of their harvest in taxes and rent, while in the United States, sharecroppers paid more than 50%. In short, this was a productive, functioning agrarian society. The Fellahin success was built on centuries of experience working with the Jezreel's complex ecosystem of wetlands and fertile plains. The Zionist colonists saw the Jezreel's wetlands as unproductive swamps. In reality, they were the cornerstone of a complex agro-ecosystem, replenishing topsoil through seasonal floods, sustaining fish and grazing buffalo, providing water storage that buffered droughts and floods. The Fellahin and the Bedouin had developed an interdependent economy that was in sync with this ecosystem. Bedouin grazed their flocks on post-harvest stubble, fertilizing the Fellahin soil. Fellahin villages served as trading posts for the nomadic Bedouin. But while the arrangement was not always harmonious, it proved resilient and mutually beneficial. Under the Fellahin's Musha communal land system, Fellahin plots were periodically redistributed to prevent wealth concentration and to incentivize collective management of the land and wetlands that fed them all.
Maybe that's the reason that they had to destroy it. Collective living? You mean like on the kibbutzes, I suppose? Is that...
Well, yeah. I mean, the early Zionists were definitely communal.
So when did that change?
That's a capitalism thing too. I mean, the early Zionists were going there and setting up these little communities, the communes, essentially kibbutzes, and having that and being agricultural. And, and there were a lot of people that were living that way for decades before, 1947, 48. And they were perfectly content living that way amongst the population there. So, this had to do with white colonialism, not the people that were trying to live in little communities.
In the Jezreel, mosquitoes carried malaria, but over thousands of years, the fellahin had evolved red blood cell adaptations that mitigated the effects of malaria. The European colonists had no such biological defenses. The Zionist Merhavia settlement in the Jezreel was abandoned after being ravaged by malaria and later resettled as a kibbutz. One of the kibbutz's early members was none other than Golda Meir, who had to leave when her husband contracted malaria.
You want to talk about one of the most disgusting people to ever walk the earth?
Oh, yeah.
Think of,
and she's so revered, like so revered. Like I grew up amongst people that definitely thought extremely highly of her.
Well, the person that's the equivalent of her today is Daniela Weiss. Like if you guys think of what a psychopath Daniela Weiss is, well, that's what Golda Meir was about 75, 80 years ago. It's the same thing.
Yeah. These are psychotic people.
Oh, yes. And as Marvin Vargas points out, her real name is Goldie Mabovich from Ukraine. Shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
Ironic that the woman who claimed that Palestinians didn't exist couldn't live on the land that the people who didn't exist were biologically adapted to. And what was the actual impact of replacing the fellahin with the Zionist colonists? In 1930, the British Hope Simpson Report offered an assessment. The results of Jewish colonization of the Vale of Esdraelon are varied. In some villages, there are clear signs of success. In others, the opposite is the case. The village of Afule, which the American Zionist Commonwealth boomed as the Chicago of Palestine, is a sea of thistles. A plague of field mice was officially stated to be due to the fact that 30,000 dunams of the land held by the Jews are derelict and covered with weeds. The report went on to say, "It is a mistake to assume that the Vale of Esdraelon was a wilderness before the arrival of the Jewish settlers, and that it is now a paradise." The fellahin in the Jezreel maintained productive agriculture for generations while paying heavy taxes and rent to absentee landlords. By contrast, Zionist agriculture on the same land required massive, continuous injections of foreign capital, including subsidized housing, land, and tools, just to stay afloat.
Sound familiar?
Yes.
It's going on today, guys. It is still going on today. The billions upon billions of dollars every year that we subsidize these spoiled sons of bitches, they're not even the least bit grateful. There is a clip that is going to drop this evening at the 9 o'clock hour, or the 10 o'clock hour Eastern time, I should say. Israelis in Italy harassing and attacking Italians for supporting Palestine. In Italy. They are an entitled bunch, to say the least. And this is in part why we must end this unholy alliance.
Remember, Zionist organizations only bought the most fertile, intensively cultivated land in Palestine.
Of course.
They imported tractors, chemical fertilizers, and built agricultural research centers. Yet, despite all that capital and technology, when the British conducted their survey of Palestine in 1945, they found that the humble fellahin produced 92% of the grain, 86% of the grapes, 99% of the olives, 77% of the vegetables, 95% of the melons, over 99% of the tobacco. According to the report, the Arabs, who were under 69% of the population, in 1945 were responsible for over 78% of the agricultural output. So tell me again, who was making the desert bloom? Thanks for watching. Please.
It's always been a lie. It always will be a lie. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be, shall be, must be free from this colonized hellscape that these bastards have bestowed upon the world. And we are aiding and abetting it, and have been for over 3 generations. And it's time to end it. So who knows how long it'll take for us to unwind it all, but like you've always said, we have to bear witness to this, and this is another way of bearing witness, not just watching the children get murdered, but also sharing with people just how bad this all is, and what everything that this has been about has been a lie. There is no truth. That's why they react the way that they do. Everything that they've been led to believe is a lie. I don't have any sympathy. I just want to.
I mean, a lot of us were lied to for a very long time. That's just the reality. And many people are just not wanting to see that, even though they are given the information and it's in front of them, and they still don't want to look at it. And that's the crossover to willful ignorance, from actual ignorance to willful ignorance. And unfortunately, that is also strongly correlated with class and privilege. People that have the means to know about things and choose not to, people that have the time, that aren't struggling to survive, but that you just don't bother to look things up. Those are the people that are the problem. And the information is very available now. You know, when I was a kid, this wasn't readily available information.
No, this is also part of the reason why they feel that they have to go through a massive censorship campaign across all social media, because they know that their narrative doesn't work anymore, but the cat's out of the bag. It's not going back. It's just a matter of when.